Welcome to the Digital Marketing Insights podcast, brought to you by Brightside Digital.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to say we have Luke Fitzgerald here today. Luke, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Luke. Luke's a digital marketing consultant. And Luke, we always ask the same at the beginning of the show. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, no worries, Tom. I am currently I'm a freelance digital marketing consultant. I guess primarily specializing in SEO, content marketing, and digital analytics. I'm also the proud father of three lovely girls and the proud husband of an amazing entrepreneurial wife. But just to give you a little bit of background on how I wound up in the role that I'm in today, I guess. After finishing school in the early noughties, I spent a couple of years traveling the world, teaching English and also a bit of DJing when I could find the work. I then settled back home here in Dublin in Ireland in 2008. Got a role as a blogger and a link builder at one of, I guess, Ireland's at the time, it's kind of the world's now, one of the world's leading gambling firms. I got my feet in the door nice and early there when they were just kind of exploring this whole SEO realm. So I had some big budgets to make some big mistakes and learn a lot of cool lessons along the way. I loved that. Did that for a couple of years. And then I moved agency side then back in 2015 to head up the SEO team. There was no SEO team essentially at the time when I joined, and we built it into a sort of 19, 20 strong team over the next 5 years, working with some really super duper clients in some great industries. Worked with amazing colleagues and won some pretty excellent awards and accolades along the way. I then went freelance in 2020, and pretty much haven't looked back since. I guess my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. It's really been my calling in life, I guess. I'm really thriving being my own boss, kind of paddling my own canoe, working my job around my life rather than the other way around. Being present for my family, doing the school runs in the mornings, and obviously spending quality time with my kids, and also getting to work with some of the coolest brands in the world at the same time, So I'm really loving the flexibility and freedom of being freelance. It's pretty awesome.
Brilliant. And Luke, what would you say is your main traffic driver, your main skill in digital? I'm guessing SEO is probably largely up on the list.
It's got to be SEO. Yeah, like I've dipped my toes in pretty much all areas of digital throughout my career. But yeah, since pretty much day one, I really took a shine to SEO, and I guess mastering the field of organic. It's an ever-changing ecosystem. That's kind of been my passion ever since. I guess I'm a bit of a T-shaped marketer, I guess, for want of a better term. Like I've got a pretty broad marketing knowledge across, the likes of social, affiliate, PPC, PR, digital PR, content, email, and obviously SEO. But the only thing I can confidently, I guess, market myself as is as an SEO. That's where my real depth of knowledge lies, throughout all areas of technical, on page and off page SEO. So yeah, to answer your question, it'd definitely be SEO. It's the only thing I really charge money for. So it's probably the only thing I can really claim to be a specialist in, really.
And obviously, a lot of people listening to this would be familiar with SEO. They would have their own routines. But what do you see is the biggest value in SEO at the current landscape? And what do you think, if you were looking at maybe an established client and you had keywords identified that there wasn't any kind of golden eggs in that kind of territory, how would you scale up a company's SEO in general?
Yeah, and I kind of promised myself I wouldn't use that cheesy, all-encompassing SEO term of it depends, but it really does depend, like no two websites are the same, no two businesses are operating at the same life cycle in the same industry at the same time, so it really does depend. It's not really a set. I can't give you a singular answer to that question. It really does depend on their dynamics. But this, like, to boil it down into what ultimately moves the dial in SEO, there's three main pillars, and it's technical. First pillar, technical. Is there anything on the front end, back end that's prohibiting Google or other search engines from crawling, indexing, and ultimately ranking the website? Assuming there isn't, and we've made the site technically excellent, then the next pillar is kind of content and content relevance. So, are the words on the website relevant and aligned with what users are ultimately searching for on Google? So that obviously comes from your keyword research and comes from your content creation to answer the main insights from the keyword research. And then assuming that you've got a technically excellent site with some killer content, then it's not just a case of build it and traffic will come. It's also a task to promote it and sort of amplify what's on the website. And that's the sort of third pillar of authority. So, vis-a-vis, you mentioned it, like your question was if it's an established brand, they would probably have a bit of clout in their niche. You'd like to think they have a good social following, some sort of PR footprint or mechanism. And we need to make sure that those mechanisms are driving links to the website. Authority, Google still looks at backlinks as a pretty strong indicator in terms of authority of a website. So we need to make sure we're gaining a lot of them and gaining good quality ones from the right sources that will help enhance the overall authority of the website. So yeah, pretty long-winded answer to your question, but A, it depends, and B, it needs to we need to make sure we're firing on all cylinders across each of those three main pillars of excellence, really.
Yeah, and look, like I think a lot of people listening that would appreciate how experienced you are in SEO and how much you know and have seen the space change. So I
Yeah,
think it might be good for us to touch on just some factors that you think are quite good in all those areas. I suppose in technical SEO,
yeah.
what's your thoughts towards expanding out different kind of subdomains like our or geolocate in the site so it's a /ie /UK, that kind of setup? Or are you
Yeah,
very much a .com guy and try and bring in the traffic into that one website?
Yeah, so ordinarily I would recommend, marketing on, if you're talking international SEO and scaling in multiple locations, having a singular domain is a good idea rather than lots of various subdomains, because subdomains are kind of treated by Google as separate entities in their own right. So if you want to only have to market and only have to host and only have to maintain one singular entity, which makes sense to me. You would go the .com route and build out various subdirectories, e.g. /UK/US/DE. Depending on what country you want to target, you'd have a dedicated subdirectory with localized, trans-created and transcribed, translated content
Yep.
on each of those subdirectories, and you'd use Google's best practice advice in relation to hreflang tags to make sure you're tagging those subdirectories correctly so that they rank in the specific region we want them to rank in. So I've done that for a number. I work with a lot of I guess big international clients, and we've executed that quite successfully on a number of them. So oftentimes the question is asked, how do we grow traffic by X%? And oftentimes the answer is like turn on a new region. So yeah, very 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 common is a situation where we turn on a new region and you see traffic flowing in on the back of it. So yeah, the subdirectory approach definitely works better than the subdomain approach in that particular scenario, I guess.
Brilliant. And I won't necessarily ask around keywords because there's been always a lot of discussion with different softwares and stuff that can identify that. But in terms
Yeah,
of, I suppose, your campaign work, so that third tier you mentioned around, making sure there's a routine for creating, good in content either socially or PR based. Is there
yeah.
any kind of ideas or stuff you could give our audience of how you would go about doing that, or is there any go-to places or snippets that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so like when it comes to off-page SEO, like a lot of people, a lot of my I guess people I've worked with and managed and mentored over the years, they often find SEO, off-page SEO. I still call it link building. Uh, it might be reframed as
I still
digital
call it link
PR or
building,
whatever you want
Morgan.
to call it now, but it's essentially the art of getting links. A lot of people still find that probably the most challenging aspect. You can learn technical SEO doing a course. You can pretty much learn content marketing, reading good resources online, but you can't become a great link builder without actually just putting in the hard hours and actually going through the thankless task of doing outreach and overcoming rejection and all the woes that come with it. You might send 100 emails and you'll be ignored probably 95% of the time, and 5 of those people that get back to you, 3 of them might ask you for money and one might tell you to feck off, and you might get only 1 or 2 links out of the 100. So it really is an art of resilience and an art of there's definitely an approach that you need to adapt to follow, and to make sure that you're growing your success rates when you're doing email outreach. But it comes back to the campaign execution. What's the idea? Why would anyone care about this? And what's the hook? If you're asking someone to link to you, webmasters, people who have the ability to give you a link, they're pretty busy people. They probably get 10. I've seen some journalists with 50 such requests in a given day. So you need to make your pitch stand out, and that all comes back to the actual what's the angle here. You can't simply be asking for a link, a one-way request. It needs to be a mutually beneficial offering that you're bringing to their inbox. So there's a number of tools, like BuzzSumo I use for actual the outreach management, but there's no real tool that can give you. You need to spend time crafting an idea, and you need to use a rubric, a sort of measurement rubric, to make sure it's a good idea, that it's something that's going to resonate with your target audience, and that when you've created the asset, that it's a quality asset and that it's adding value to the readership of the person you're asking to link to it. So there's no real sort of shortcut to that. It's a bit of an art in its own right, but you kind of need to go through the process of quality ideation,
Yeah,
really, really strong execution of the piece. Then once the idea has been, I guess, refined correctly, and then once you've got the thing live, going out and asking for links to it, if it's a good quality entity, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to refine who you're asking and the way you're asking to improve the likelihood of success on that, without having to have a huge budget on things like buying links or having a digital PR team, essentially paying to get them in the top tier media coverage. If the story is good enough, and if the asset that you're promoting is good enough, people will and regularly do link to these things for free.
yeah.
Sorry, again, another bit of a long-winded answer. I could probably have a whole standalone session on that, and probably prepare some slides and stuff like that, which I regularly do in training sessions with some of my clients. But yeah, it's an art in of itself, and it's really one of those things you just gotta. There's no one size fits all. You got to just sort of find your own groove and see what works for you.
Definitely. It's
See what works
practice,
for
really,
your
isn't
audience.
it? In that side of things, of coming up with the campaign ideas, and some will land, some will won't. I
Yeah,
suppose from anyone listening, with kind of, they have to report to managers or business owners or so on. It's just a patience game. Sometimes you're going to land something big and get several links, and sometimes something
yeah.
might fall flat. That's part of
Absolutely. For every success story or big case study you see, there's probably 20 absolute failures lurking in the background that no one really shouts loud about.
yeah,
So yeah, it really is. You gotta understand that your likelihood of success, depending on what you determine as success. But if you're talking pure link numbers, especially in Ireland, where it's such a close, it's a small space. There's only probably, I don't know, less than 100 real entities that you would approach in Ireland that you would be really delighted to get a link from. Obviously the UK, the US are bigger ponds to go fishing in, but it's a smaller market in Ireland. So the good thing about that is you build up relationships with the journos and the webmasters and the people who are likely to run with your story, provided you give them a ready-made piece to run with, essentially. So it can be a bit of a double-edged sword working in a smaller market like Ireland, you know.
Brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree. That's exactly it. Just to add to that, I don't know if you're familiar with the software, but I, for the last probably 2 years, have saved so much time on my outreach using Ninja Outreach,
Yeah,
which is a platform for anyone listening. I suppose that's my value for this show is get on Ninja Outreach. You can identify it by websites, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or just emails out on sites. You
yeah.
search the industry you're in, what kind of content you're looking for, whether it's just your link building or it's influencer networking or guest posting or sponsor post or podcast interview outreach, that kind of stuff. Um, that's a pretty good tool. I don't know, Luke, if you're familiar with that one.
Yeah, we've actually we trialed it a few years ago. We were kind of making a decision on which one to go with when I was agency side. We trialed a Ninja outreach. We trialed Pitchbox and we trialed Buzzstream. And I can't remember the rationale for it, but we went with Buzzstream in the end, and I still use Buzzstream today. It does pretty much everything you've just described there, and yeah, it's an absolute beast of a tool. It just takes a lot of the manual faffing and nonsense out of the outreach process, and it pretty much gives you a ready-made list every time you want to run a campaign. So yeah, it's an excellent piece of software. And yeah, to be fair, Ninja did pretty much the same thing at the time. I think it was probably a commercial decision to go with Buzzstream in the end, I think.
Yeah, because the price of these platforms, you only need a couple of them in, because you can use refs and a couple of different things for different aspects of SEO and stuff, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
you run up a bill of five, maybe 1,000 euros a month just in softwares.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Like, yeah, I'm a bit of an Appsumo magpie. You know, I'm always on Appsumo, probably at least once a month, picking up a new shiny thing at a big discount. You know, and to be honest, most of them end up unused or sitting in the scrap heap. But there's always a couple of gems in there. You know, and I've probably picked up 4 or 5 really excellent tools on Appsumo over the years that I still use to this day, and they cost pretty much nothing, you know. So yeah, you can run up massive budgets, but if you know where to get good discounts, you can get a pretty good, pretty awesome arsenal at a really low cost, you know. So just
brilliant.
pays to shop around, I guess, and look for the good deals.
Yeah, so AppSumo is kind of your software based website where it just gives you discounts because normally they're trying to grow their sponsorship numbers. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so it's like a marketplace. It just showcases, yeah, like, so there's a lot of things like this. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head some things I've picked up on AppSumo over the year. Like SEO Monitor would be kind of probably the best one, to be honest. It's a good alternative to SEMrush or Ahrefs. Really handy sort of progress reporting and forecasting tool where I still manage most of my clients' kind of health ongoing profiles. Phrase.io would be another good one. That's FRASE.io. That helps build AI driven content briefs, does keyword research and content creation at scale. That kind of allows me to do the work of a small team on my own, which is pretty invaluable as a freelancer. And there's another couple of tools that I've picked up over the years that not from AppSumo, but probably Search View would be probably I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I'm struggling to find ones that haven't been already covered by one of your previous guests, but definitely Search View, search SEARCHVIU. Like a lot of my work involves pretty complex web migrations and replatforms. So if anyone's involved in moving, to a different system, or changing their domain name or anything like that, they'll be familiar with the concept of a web migration. This search view platform helps automate a lot of the heavy lifting on that, processes such as cloud-based crawling and redirect mapping and sort of, snag fixing post-migration then as well. This is an excellent tool run by a couple of cool German dudes who I've built up a really strong working relationship with over the years by probably being one of their power users. If you're doing a lot of migrations, you kind of need to have search view in your arsenal. So there's so many different cool tools, and again, they all do different things, and people, one man's meat is another man's poison. I might find something excellent and you might find it terrible, so the joy of it is there's so many different options out there for us, and we're kind of spoiled for choice in the market at the moment.
Yeah. And like even there, what you were saying, Luke, I think any listener would gain so much value from looking into some of these softwares. Just especially as you know, like you can get Adobe Cloud and pay what 800 euros ish a year
Yeah.
for the software, but then there is so many platforms out there that do a lot of this thing, the exact same things for a fraction of
That's
the
it. And
cost.
I always try and give the indie sort of, the nerd who's just built a little tool. I try and give them my budget ahead of, a big faceless organization like Adobe. That's probably why I'm an SEO. I don't like giving Google money, but yeah, I'll always give the small guy a chance rather than the big established thing if I can.
Really well said. Yeah. And Luke, away from obviously your clear strengths in SEO, is there any particular areas you're working on at the moment to upskill yourself in, and why?
Yeah, so I guess it's got to be the AI content space. Like there's like with GPT-3, and there's a whole host of cool tools on the market now to kind of robotically create pretty excellent content. It's kind of both exciting and worrying that the bots are finally here to take some of our jobs. But I definitely don't see it as a threat. It's absolutely an opportunity, and like we're still a long way from the AI actually fooling too many humans that read it. But I have been involved in a couple of affiliate projects and still on an ongoing basis where we've kind of done away with outsourcing low cost per word human writers entirely, and we're kind of letting the AI at it, and the results have been pretty strong. So like I see in a couple of different verticals I'm working in, like there's AI stuff ranking at the top of Google for some really competitive terms already, and the telltale sign that that's probably working that better than it should be is that like Google just recently, the last couple of weeks, I think, have categorically come out and said that it's a bad idea to use AI generated content. I think John Mueller was in search engine land like literally 2 weeks ago saying that. So if it's against Google guidelines, it's always one to watch. Like at face value, that definitely makes sense, but you'd have to question the logic as to why they're actually saying that. Like Google themselves use AI every millisecond as part of their own algorithms. Why can't webmasters use it as part of their own arsenal?
Yeah.
So it's always if something's effectively blacklisted by those in the know, it always pays just to stand back and scratch a little bit deeper below the surface and try and understand why they're taking that stance. And my suspicion and early evidence suggests that there's some really slick rewards for those who can and do leverage AI content to their advantage. And as long as they're not just spamming the web with badly spun content, there's definitely a place for it. And that's probably where I'll be spending a lot of my curious energy in the coming months for sure. So yeah, watch this space. It's definitely an exciting area.
Yeah, I'm really interested to know a bit more about that as well. Normally, my next question on the podcast would be asking about the digital industry as a whole, but I think you're touching on it there, Luke. Uh, it sounds like early signs you're feeling it's probably working too well, and a lot of this content is indexing quite high, and Google are
Yeah,
partly worried because of all the people that put the effort in their unique pieces, but also a kind of another company or agency or something coming in and taking over large parts of the market quite quickly because they can
yeah.
produce so much content so quickly.
That's it. And you'll see, like, I don't know if you're familiar with you.com. It's like a competitor to Google. They're trying to take a chunk out of the market, and they have a really excellent sort of personalized search engine. You.com/right actually has an AI generation tool, so that kind of like they're definitely kind of, you know, trying to steal a march on what Google are doing, that with their search engine, but they're literally giving webmasters the ability and the tools to create their own AI content, and Google definitely sees that as a threat. So kind of similar to what they've done in the past with their algo updates around like link building, for example. They came out with the Penguin thing. They'll penalize people for using it, but they'll also, they can't really detect what's human built and what's AI built, so they kind of have to accept it and try and put curbs on it, because spammy SEOs will always take things to the nth degree and make the web a worse place. But there are good good SEOs and good content marketers who will make the web a better place. So, you can't just categorically rule out and sort of, penalize people for using AI content. If the AI is doing a better job than a human, then why not embrace it, and let the human focus on other areas such as, customer excellence and all the other excellent things that form part of a well-rounded marketing strategy. The actual text creation is one of the simpler ends of that process. So why not let the bots at it, again, there's probably a whole separate podcast in that one for us to mill into another day, but it's definitely an exciting space. That's for sure,
Yeah, and we will talk about
Yeah.
it another day, especially if a lot of people comment and find this particular subject interesting. We'll definitely have to get you back, Luke.
Yep.
Lastly, we always try and understand the people behind the role a little bit more, and I always ask if you could bottle up one personality trait that you have, Luke, and you could pass it on to others, what would it be?
Yeah, okay, Jesus, that's always the hard part, the self-praise bit that I struggle with. I don't know. I guess I'm diligent in the work that I do. I'll never turn around a piece of work that I'm not 100% happy with. I'm obviously loyal to those I work with and love, but I guess if I was to say the one thing I kind of admire most in myself, and I've only kind of found out in more recent years, is that I'm definitely resilient. I've been through a lot of pretty high, pretty high ups and some very low downs in my career, and I kind of try and practice the art of impermanence if I can in how I approach work and life. And it sounds a little bit arty farty or hippie-ish, but that's something I picked up along. I did a 10-day silent retreat, a Vipassana meditation thing back in 2017. And it was kind of life changing. It's been a really valuable life skill for me ever since. Like, kind of just to summarize, like, nothing really lasts forever. So you can't let the highs go to your head. You can't let the lows drag you into a dark place. You kind of have to find that middle ground, and that for me has been the key to sort of consistent resilience and happiness that I found in recent years, particularly. And just being having a strong mindset and making sure you're sort of approaching things with a good mentality, and that you're just understanding that good things don't last forever, bad things don't last forever. So finding that sense of impermanence and embracing it, I guess, is the key to my resilience. And it's not something you kind of really think about or understand in your early 20s or whatever when you're starting out on this walk of life, but it's definitely something now as I reach my late 30s. Just, I sound like an old man saying this, but just being resilient, not letting the good times get to your head, and not letting the bad times get you down, and just kind of barreling on and continuing as best you can. There's always a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how dark a place you're in. And you can't keep a good man down, so you got to just keep doing what you do and show up and put the work in and be as honest as you can, and good things will generally come your way.
What a lovely way to end the show, Luke. Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope our listeners, you've loved listening to Luke, and I definitely want to get him back at some stage. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Really, really appreciate it, and I had a lot of fun today. Hopefully speak to you again soon.
Yeah, cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Take care.